Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I would like to call this meeting to order. Can our clerk, Jessie Clark, please call the roll?
Thank you. Mayor Lamsad, are you present?
I am present.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
I'm here.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Braybrook?
Present.
Councillor Cadigan?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present, and can you hear me?
We can. Ann Ruth,
Thank
Deputy.
you.
Ann Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Sarah Dillamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Legislative Coordinator, Executive Assistant to the CAO.
Present.
Rachel Stark, Economic Development and Marketing Coordinator.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services Clerk, is present.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 1.3, which is the land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone is aware that of the passing of one of our residents. Murray Kidd passed away last week, and he was a longtime volunteer. He was part of the Kawartha Highlands Signature Site Park's infancy as a very, very contributing member of society, and will be sorely missed by friends, family, and many of his colleagues. Thank you. Okay.
Just want to make one comment about Murray Kidd.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Franzen.
And I certainly agree with you. And he ran against me once in the municipal election, so I got to know him very well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2 of our agenda, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. If anyone has an interest on an item on the agenda, please discuss it or disclose it prior to discussing anything on that item. I am seeing no hands. We can move on to the approval of the agenda as circulated. Deputy Mayor Armstrong. And a seconder for the approval of the agenda. All in favor is Councilor Braybrook. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item number 4 of the adoption of the minutes. We can do the regular meeting and statutory meeting at the same time. And we have a public meeting on December 20th as well. If anyone has questions on them, I would entertain a motion. The Councilor Franzen for a mover.
Motion received.
Councilor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? The motion to receive has carried. Okay. Move on to section 5, which is committees and boards. We have committee of adjustment, liaison reports for committees. We might as well move on one at a time, I think. You can do the committee of adjustment. I'm sure we've had time to peruse those. Anyone care to make a motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councilor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor to receive them. That motion is carried. Liaison reports and council boards and committees. Does anyone have a report? I'm seeing none. And we're on to 5.3, which is Recreation Culture Advisory Committee. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to review it. And I think Bob Taylor-Basie would like to speak to that. If you can unmute yourself and share your camera, that would be great, Bob.
So can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can.
It will be a pleasure the day that we could all be in person. Thank you, Mayor Lamstead, and good afternoon to members of council and staff. Before I begin this presentation, on behalf of the members of the PRCAC, I would like to congratulate Councillors Braybook and Cadigan on their election as members of what we see as a dynamic team. This presentation focuses on strategic priorities from 2023 to 2026. Next slide. It's a very simple purpose. We want to provide you with input into the review that you're going to be undertaking starting, I guess, sometime later this month and extending into March. Next slide. The members of PRCAC, like all advisory committee members, take their role seriously. That meant that in June, we looked at our performance over the last 4 years, what worked and what did not. Our first step was to make a number of recommendations focused on the terms of reference of the committee to take over from us post-election. And as well, we were aware of the strategic priorities review and the need for input from our committee to support that process. Next slide. This review has a narrow focus, confined to opportunities available in the future, and specifically council-sponsored strategic priorities and supporting guiding principles for the 2023-2026 term of PRCAC. It does not address community hubs nor heritage priorities. PRCAC is recommending that the next PRCAC address both. Next slide. We revisited our original situation appraisal document in June and matched our accomplishments and their alignment with our 2019 to 2022 strategic priorities. Then we drilled down further to review the guiding principles that we established and used to build the PRC master plan. We assessed their relevancy today and the need for adjustments based on our perception of a current imperative. Next slide. We'll move right into our recommendations. It has become increasingly apparent that residents in general are unaware of the future opportunities for parks, recreation, and culture. This does not say that communication has not been extensive. It speaks instead to the need to ensure that engagement of the public is a key element in a comprehensive communications plan. The Open Spaces Review has clearly identified that need, and we will speak to that in our next presentation. This must be a priority. We understand that a plan exists. We would argue that it could be more robust and inclusive. Second, as we worked our way through 4 years of collaborative research, it became apparent that emphasis on seniors was important, but only one piece in a larger tapestry. That tapestry is based on a priority of collaboration involving strong partnerships between currently independent groups, some municipal and others private. This was a constant theme in the 3 all-candidates meetings, and it speaks to the principal theme of societal wellness. Next slide. We have an economic development and tourism strategy to be unveiled in a presentation to follow later in this agenda. So what's been missing over the last term? Strategy or no strategy? It is an unfortunate disconnect between Council's 2 key advisory committees, PRCAC and EDAC. The issue is unresolved overlap, and the solution is a priority to establish 1, defined individual roles for each advisory committee, and 2, an integrated collaborative approach, including, as we recommended last fall, cross-committee appointments. One such overlap is the challenge of cultural tourism. Another example is the lack of a specific request to PRCAC to provide its collegial input into the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Fourth, in 2022, Council approved a comprehensive volunteer management policy. What next? It's time to be more proactive, to accept that our volunteer base needs replenishing with a robust recruitment and retention plan. There is no alternative, especially in light of resource demands that will emerge from the long-term open spaces plan, as well as the other two priorities, community networking and heritage preservation. Next slide. The final recommended revision to current priorities is the future of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. Too often, master plans take up space on shelves and accumulate dust. This plan is a living, dynamic, and evolving tool. It is the roadmap for the future. On this aspect of municipal governance, it would benefit from a set of key performance indicators, perhaps one of the objectives for the incoming PRCAC. Implementation could be seen as tactical in nature, not strategic, but not in this case. Enshrining the criticality of open spaces, community hub growth, and heritage designation are fundamental to the future growth of Trent Lakes. Next slide. Our review of the guiding principles we established for the 2019-22 term resulted in the conclusion that all of them were still relevant, high in relevance, but there were two missing. The principle that in a landscape that is in flux, with changes to such legislation as the Conservation Authorities Act, an imperative is appropriate, cost-effective, and accessible land use. It may be a given, but givens have a way of not being implemented. The principle based on the fact that preservation of our municipal heritage is underappreciated and fragile. This just isn't just about genealogy and writing local histories. It's about education, policy commitments to preserve cultural landscapes, preserve documentary sources, and preserve built heritage, the architecture. And again, this gets lots of airtime, but it needs to be a guiding principle to support the visionary objectives of the master plan. Whoops, I lost you. That concludes our review. We now leave any consideration of these recommendations in the hands of council as it prepares for the upcoming strategic priorities review. Thank you for the opportunity to present these observations and recommendations. I seem to have lost you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob Taylor Basie. Any comments or questions, council members? Councilor Cadigan, go ahead.
Bob, do you have any, through the mayor, Mr. Basie, do you have any ideas about how to get new volunteers? Are we looking for volunteers for the committee? Are we looking for volunteers for information?
I think my position would be based on my experience with other volunteer groups. The volunteer recruitment and retention is a huge issue everywhere. One of my other volunteer groups in Peterborough, we're finding that there is competition for volunteers. So what we need is a strategy that says, what kind of volunteers do we need specifically? What do we want them to do? And what is the demographic that we want to approach? That would be my response.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? I see Councillor Branson.
Just one comment, and with communications with the mayor, the communications is so difficult in a spread out rural municipality like we have that doesn't have a newspaper that covers their whole municipality, and communications is very difficult. And I don't have a solution. I think we may have to look at how we can improve.
Thank you very much. I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. With you, Mayor Lamson, a comment to Councillor Francis and then a motion. The comment is that we now have someone on staff and half of their role is communications. We never had that before. So I think we acknowledge that, it's a challenging job for anybody. And, we, however, have designated somebody on staff with that specific responsibility. So as she gets up to speed and more settled in her role, I think we can work with her to enhance our communications. And the motion is simply to receive the report and also ensure that it is brought forward as one of the inputs to our strategic planning exercise.
Yep.
I
And
just have a follow-up comment.
would you like to second the motion first, or,
I'll second the motion.
okay, and then you can have your comment. Go ahead.
My comment wasn't critical of staff or council. It was just a comment of the situation that we're in, and it's a very difficult situation.
Very true. Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Very much. And we can move on to item number 5.4, which is once again Bob Taylor-Bailey.
Well, thank you again, Mayor Lamstead. Now we turn to the wonderful world of opportunities for the development of open spaces. Next slide. Part of the review process in the development of the open spaces master plan, initiated late last spring, was feedback from PRCAC. We have reviewed documents presented to us, and accordingly, we will now review both general and specific observations and comments, as well as some appropriate recommendations to council. Next slide. We'll go into detail on each later in this presentation, but I wanted to read these recommendations right up front. First, that a strategy be added to the proposed list of strategies to address ongoing resource needs, including staffing, volunteers, financial resources, and external resources. Second, that a one-off communication to residents be circulated similar to the communication in the fall relating to the municipal election, outlining the context of the open spaces plan and final recommendations, both standard-driven and project-driven. That the term of PRCAC be extended to allow for, one, the review of anticipated planning documents, and two, the preparation of advice and input to council. Four, that underlying standards and best practices be developed as a 2023 priority. Fifth, that any decisions be deferred until results of public consultation are analyzed and council has determined its 2023 to 2026 priorities and the committee structure needed to support them is confirmed. And finally, that a review be undertaken of the municipal communication strategy to ensure that all demographics receive appropriate outreach. Next slide. Let's begin by reviewing the context of how we got here. It starts with the term or the concept of open spaces. There is no question that trails received outstanding support in our 2020 survey, but so too was support also strong for parks and beaches. And as an aside, all but one of our parks are actually waterfront parks. Our project plans revealed synergies between trails and other amenities, and accordingly, we combined them to eliminate unnecessary overlap, and so we introduced the open spaces concept. It's not a new concept, but it was a step change for us. An open spaces master plan was one of the three major recommendations made to council, and we also provided input into the RFP for a consultant. Next slide. Next slide in. Oh, you have to go back two. That's it. Thank you. For the open spaces project, we played a key advisory role, not only into the design of the RFP, but also input into the first, but not surprisingly, the second survey. In the transition from one council to another, and for purposes of continuity, our term was extended to the end of this month with a decision by council in October of 2022. We continued our advisory function with comments on the draft recommendations presented to us on January the 2nd and the 10th. And as a result, we have developed a set of recommendations for council. Next slide. One of our initial observations in early January was the absence of a revised project timeline. And we were prepared to recommend that one be requested to think design by council. We appreciate the proactive efforts of our Director of Facilities and Recreation after our January the 12th meeting to secure the timeline you see on this chart. Note that it is very clear that a lot of the heavy lifting on reviewing a more detailed plan, the third milestone on this chart, will occur after our extended term has expired on January 31st. Next slide. Let's review the scope. It's one back in. Next one. Next one. I think this is slide 7 or something. This one comes after the last background. That's it. Okay, let's review the scope of our review. The contents of this slide are pretty self-evident. Our review was and will be based on the fundamental directions of the PRC master plan. We had to wrestle with 2 sets of draft recommendations 1 week apart. And we felt a need to incorporate and reinforce the importance of the master plan, address the sticky issue of communications, and reinforce the need for increased public awareness and engagement. At this point, we are not making comments on specific recommendations, pending a final set for review in the February 15th timeframe. Next slide. You missed one. You missed the assumptions one. Thank you. We made some significant assumptions. We need more data. At stake is a 10-year long-term staged plan. Open spaces project planning is one of a number of priorities under review by council, aligned with its 2023-2026 strategic priorities. Any prioritization and implementation planning will be determined by council. There will be a lame duck period at a critical juncture between council approval of a recommended master plan and a fully functional new PRCAC. The 2023 municipal budget has reserved no funding for further studies, and our assumption is that 2023 would focus on planning rather than building. Next slide. Our task was very straightforward. Did the recommendations make sense? Were they reasonable and achievable? And by the way, the answer to all 3 questions is a qualified yes. How do they relate to each other where relevant? What changes were made between the November 24th and January 10th reversions? What do we perceive as gaps in knowledge? And what criteria need to be developed to address priorities? Next slide. Think Design has provided us with a comprehensive overview of possibilities. They have scoped out a long-term map of trails and trailheads that is full of potential. And we acknowledge and cannot understate the immense amount of work undertaken, and further recognize that the value adds between the November and January sets of draft recommendations provide a very broad and aspirational but thorough foundation. It is also clear that there are 2 hurdles to overcome. One is the fact that most residents are not aware of this process. Understand the complexity of public consultation, the balance of surveys, including whether the scope was generic or specific, open houses, online portals, and the like. But in this case, in our opinion, attempts to push out awareness and notifications were not successful in terms of extensive outreach. And the other is the need to address resource management. whether that is staff capacity, revenue sources and sustainability, or critically, volunteer support. This might include leveraging the expertise of groups such as the Ontario Heritage Trust or the Ontario Land Trust Association and other municipal groups in charge of trails. And this builds on the considerable research and investigation undertaken by PRCAC's Trails Subcommittee. Next slide. In addition, land use planning is a significant hurdle with 27 recommendations depending on a land use strategy. In addition, the environmental impact analyses, archaeological studies, and legal negotiations is a major financial consideration. Most recommended trails will be on non-municipal land, although most of the trailheads will be on municipal property. And some recommendations are foundational to the planning for others. So could I ask the Deputy Clerk to bring up the matrix we developed? We're not going to go through it. We just wanted to show in graphic terms the interdependencies evident in an open spaces plan matrix. Yeah, I know it's impossible to read, but I think the key is to see how many numbers are in columns that refer to a similar recommendation. I'm going to pick out 4 of them. The signage strategy is required for 21 follow-up recommendations. The online portal, 47 recommendations depend on it. 27 recommendations depend on the land access strategy. And in terms of standards and guidelines, 50 of the recommendations depend on those existing. I think we can go back to the presentation. Next slide. Oh, that's it. No, I'm sorry, one back. Next one. Okay, I'm sorry, back. Thank you. A number of critical considerations for open spaces were not addressed in the recommendations, and there are 3: heritage, Indigenous interests, and volunteer capacity. Now, all 3 of these considerations are foundational to the success of this plan, but the actual words and corresponding need were not highlighted in the recommendations. And finally, PRCAC needs to have its term extended to support Council's decision on how to proceed. Next slide. Now we come to the recommendations. First, a long-term vision of a series of interconnected trails with new or enhanced trailheads will have a dramatic impact on staff capacity, volunteer support, financial resourcing, and influence by external groups with demonstrated experience, as we mentioned earlier. This resource strategy is an imperative. Public consultation needs to be expanded, including a one-off communication in the spring to all residents, as well as a future public open house to unveil the open spaces plan, as well as the municipal strategic priorities for this upcoming term. And the third recommendation is also considered to be essential. If PRCAC is not extended beyond January the 31st, there will be no avenue for review of planning documents and subsequent advice to council reflecting the expertise of current members and representing a resident perspective. Next slide. The fourth recommendation has as its premise that no trail or trailhead can be developed unless there is a clear body of standards, the underpinning of that work. This should be the first step. Fifth, there's no need to rush this process. It's tied at the hip with Council's strategic priorities review and a resulting identification of committees required to support those priorities. And finally, it's clear that different demographic sectors use or do not use one or more social media tools. We argue that a revised communication strategy is needed so that no resident can say that he or she was not kept informed on a timely basis. So to conclude, PRCAC would ask of council that it approve the extension of PRCAC's term today, and that it approve in principle the recommendation for a new resource strategy and direct PRCAC to work with staff to scope out this recommendation and report back to council. And that it approve the recommendation for a one-time communication this spring to our residents, and again, direct PRCAC to work with staff to scope out the content of that communication and report back to council. The final recommendation on communication strategies has a significance for more than open spaces, and it is offered as a suggestion for future discussions. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to any questions, and I'll try to answer them.
Okay, does any member of council have a question? See Councillor Braybrook.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks very much, Bob. That was both your presentations. I know I appreciate it, being fairly new on council. How long would you expect the extension if council decides to extend the PRCAC's current term? What would you like to see it? When would you like to see it expire?
Thank you. I have an answer for that question because there are two different initiatives I think that are sort of foundational to this. One is the completion of the strategic priorities review, which we gather will be complete by the end of March. And also the final presentation of Think Design to council mid or late March. So we don't think that it's reasonable that we would be extended. I'm sorry, we would say it's reasonable for us to be extended until March 31st.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lamson. Thanks very much, Bob. I know that the committee has been very engaged in this process and spent a lot of time and effort in it. So very much appreciate that. I believe that the consultant has done what we have asked them to do to date. The responsibility for getting public input is really a staff responsibility. They have done all that they can in trying to do so, and the response has been less than what we'd like. However, I think we have to acknowledge that that's what it is. It's partly awareness, but I think more importantly, it's complacency, or not a high enough priority for them to really take the time to weigh in. Were I not on council, my perspective would be, I love trails. Build one, I will use it. But it's not my job to figure out where, when, how, who, etc. So I will just wait until that's done by the people that have the expertise to do that. My suggestion would be that we direct the consultant to continue with their work as planned and deliver their interim report in February, final in March. That with that, council is going to have to approve it at some point. And I think there will be ample opportunity for public input as we pull out specific trail recommendations in the future. And at that time, we can go to the public and should to say we are looking at these 5 trails for this year. It will cost X and it involves this much of resources. Please provide your feedback. I think we will get much more quality and focused feedback at that time. And I think it will accomplish what you want to do. The other thing I would say is that public input is only one aspect of this project. We hired a consultant with extensive experience and expertise in building trail master plans and open space master plans. I think we should let them continue with their work, leverage their expertise and experience, give us their best advice and recommendations, and then council takes it from there. So I would agree that we should extend the term of the committee till the end of March so that they have the opportunity, and for the sole purpose of providing comment and feedback on the report, period. And then any in, uptake, proposals, implementation plans, et cetera, be picked up by council and the new PRCAC, however, and if ever it's constituted. So I said a lot. I guess I would make a motion, try and make it more manageable. The motion would be that we direct the consultant to continue, implementing their project plan and deliver their final report to council in March as proposed. And further, that the term of PRCAC be extended to the end of March for the sole purpose of providing council with comment and feedback on the consultant interim and final report.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan. Now, do we have any more questions or comments? Go ahead, Bob Taylor Raisy.
Well, first of all, it's clear that Think Design did what they're asked to. And so I think directing them to continue their work is reasonable. That's not our problem. The poor response. I know that we know. I'm not talking about this from my perspective. It's my committees and residents I talk to outside of the committee. The response rate for the survey in the fall was 2% of the population of the township. No one that I know of can make any reasonable conclusions based on 2% response. So we agree that the consultants need to continue, but where we disagree is on the phasing of public consultation. To us, there are two phases. One phase is in fact a communication to all residents later spring. And the reason that we want to do it now is because it's a hell of a lot of work. And to wait until the end of March to get that done means that this will just prolong, probably now, until the fall, with highly unlikely that a lot's going to be done in 2023. So we're looking at this from a proactive communications perspective. The second phase, of course, is after the recommendations have been approved by council, and then after the recommendations and priorities are established, then there's a different level of public consultation. But we cannot see waiting that long. So I agree that with the motion that the consultant be encouraged to continue their work. And by the way, the PRCAC, as I said earlier, we acknowledge that it's a tremendous amount of work. And we obviously support the extension of our term, but I would argue, and we would argue, that the two items that we said needed to be commenced now in advance of the final report would be what the scope of a communication to residents would be, and secondly, to address the one strategy that is not in the draft recommendations, and that's a strategy for resources. Now, if the consultant comes back quickly, because I'm sure they're on the line and say, it is our intent when we come up with a final plan that there will be a resource strategy, then we can take that off the table. So that would be my rather strong response to that. Public consultation is complex. It's also 100% critical. I know that there are some residents that are annoyed that they didn't know. And the answer is, why weren't they informed? And it's because there was no communication that engaged all the residents as we did in the 2020 survey through the tax notice. So we can't hit the tax notice. The timing doesn't work. We need something else. So that's our rationale for doing, having two proactive things that PRCAC, by the way, is committed to doing. But if you tell us all you want us to do is comment on the recommendations, then that's all we'll do. But we see that as not, we see our approach as more reasonable. So that's my response to the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from members of council? Councilor Franzen, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, just one comment is on the communications. I wonder if we shouldn't send it back to staff and ask staff what's involved with sending a mail out. What kind of hours of staff time and what the costs are. So we can make an informed decision.
Thank you. I've seen Deputy Mayor Armstrong, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask Don about that. I think one of our issues is timing. We
Yeah.
need to get the tax notice out in February.
Yep.
And there really isn't ample time to build up a good message and get it in there, in my personal opinion, but we should ask staff
Yep.
what they think. And as Bob said, there's no need to rush this. I think we get the report, which we paid for, because a consultant certainly can extend their time on it, ad infinitum. So we get the report we paid for, we get the comments from PRCOC, we work with that, and we then make some decisions in the future, and it's not going to be this year, about what we proceed with in terms of priorities. So I don't see any problem in sending it out with the tax newsletter at a later point this year.
Okay, thank you. I see Don Tiger, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. So we do have, we have delayed the printing of the flyer. Dylan would be able to speak to a message he was going to put in that based on our discussions today, but it will be reflective of the survey and the ability to complete that. As far as costs, obviously we send out 7,600 bills, so postage is around $1 a bill, and whatever costs associated with having that prepared and printed, which we would typically do through a third-party source. So those costs we could get for you, but at a minimum, the amount of the postage would be, based on 7,600 mail items.
Okay. I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong again.
Sorry, I won't prolong. It's just one other thought. I mean, if we are looking for the consultant to absorb the input from that, then we are talking about extending their term for at least, I would guess, 2 to 3 months. And I'm not sure, none of us know how much uptake even that will get. We have done everything, the staff has done everything they can and usually do for surveys of this type, with the exception of one, which was the short-term rental. And I think 5 years ago, maybe the service level one. So other than that, all of our other processes have involved exactly what was done this time. So again, I really think it's time I don't see the point in prolonging it at this time. Absolutely, we need further public consultation. I would see doing it at a later stage.
I see Bob Taylor Vasey with your hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to make a clarification there. I want to make it crystal clear. We are not suggesting that we will put a communication out in the next tax notice. That will not happen. There's no time for it. We don't even have the message ready. Our suggestion is that we should start to plan the future consultation, because a future communication going to all residents takes a lot of time to develop. And our only suggestion is that we work with staff and come back to council, maybe probably in March, with what it's going to take next step. So we're not trying to rush anything. We're just trying to think proactively about how to start to build for our next future step. Anyway, I made my point. So
Thank you very much. I think it's important to reach as many residents as we can. I think it's, this is a long-term 10-year goal we have here. It's not something you're going to do tomorrow. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the survey that was developed by our consultants, whether we could put out something into our landfill sites that would give people a link to fill out the survey online. And that would include them receiving a copy of the report online, just to reach as many people as we possibly can.
in January.
Landfill sites or transfer stations, different community centers.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I think that Mr. Vasey is speaking more to like a scope of the communication. I don't think we're talking about, let's do it tomorrow. I think try to figure out what we should be trying to do. for ourselves and our staff to reach more people. I think that's important to reach more people. I think design did a great job of what they tried to do. They've just got a very poor response. Probably the timing of the year is not ideal. I think looking forward, we need to reach more people. So that's my opinion. Carry on. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call for a vote on the motion as it is put on the table. Can we have the motion read just for clarification?
Thank you very much, Marilyn. The motion would be to receive the presentation from Bob Taylor Basie regarding the PRCAC comments on the draft open space recommendations, and further, the council direct the consultants to continue their implementation with a draft in February and final report in March as proposed. And further, that council extend the term of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee to March 31st, 2023 for the sole purpose of providing feedback and comments to council on the draft and final open spaces master plan.
Okay, I will call for a vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob Taylor Basie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now I will entertain a motion to suspend our regular council meeting and go into a open statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. Do I have someone? I see Councillor Cadigan.
So moved.
So moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Braybrook, all in favor? That motion is carried. And we can move on to section 6.1, and I'm not sure who's going to speak to that. I think probably Sarah or Adele.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Sarah. You are our junior planner, Sarah Delamarca. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality zoning bylaw B 2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's applications containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting, and a sign was posted on the subject land in accordance with the Planning Act. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must inform either myself or the clerk, and the notice of passing will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at the public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah Delamarca. Would you like to introduce the zoning bylaw amendment 2234?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public meeting for file number 22-34 to consider zoning bylaw amendments submitted by Agent Laura Stone of One Community Planning on behalf of the owner Joanne Patricia Charlebois for the property located at 70 Spur 8 on Mississauga Lake. The subject lands have a shoreline frontage of approximately 68 meters and a lot area of approximately 1.83 acres. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential private access. The lot is currently occupied by a dwelling with a ground floor area of 136.57 square meters and a detached two-story garage with a ground floor area of 44.65 square meters. The total gross floor area for the garage is 82.59 square meters. The purpose of the application is to legalize the upper floor of the garage as a guest cabin with plumbing facilities. The garage was authorized to be built under permit 209-99 in 1999 to permit the construction of a garage with storage above. The renovation of the upper floor of the garage, including the installation of the bathroom, is understood that the construction was undertaken subsequent to the sale of the property in 2020. Peterborough Public Health has advised that they have not issued a permit for the septic system or alterations to a septic system for the applicant's lot. The application was accompanied by a planning justification report in support of the proposed application. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Chris's report notes that the rationale behind the proposal is that since the guest cabin would not contain a kitchen, it would not become a dwelling unit. Chris argues that once a building has been connected to a septic system and has been plumbed, it takes very little in the way of further renovation to create a kitchen area. Chris further analyzes the new legislative changes to the Planning Act and states that because Trent Lakes does not have any land serviced with municipal sanitary and water services, the municipality is not obligated, but rather has discretion to determine if additional residential units, are an appropriate land use within its rural and shoreline areas. Additionally, Chris notes that the County of Peterborough's new official plan, which Trent Lakes will adopt once the province has approved the document, prohibits additional residential units on private roads. Chris recommends that in order to move forward with the application and achieve a positive planning outcome and establish a good precedent, the amending bylaw should authorize the upper floor of the garage as a guest cabin, subsequent to the removal of the plumbing fixtures and connections to the septic system, and would establish appropriate exemptions to the definitions and regulations for guest cabins and private garage to legalize the use of the upper floor as a guest cabin. The amending bylaw would also prohibit the use of the garage for additional residential units and prohibit the establishment of an independent guest cabin elsewhere on the applicant's lot. Peterborough Public Health commented on the proposal, stating that the application requires PPH approval and may also require a new sewage system. Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board also commented on the proposal, citing no identifiable concerns or issues related to the proposal. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks also provided commentary this morning, to which I'll read aloud out now. Quote, "Hello, Sarah. I have reviewed and discussed the file with you and offer the following comments. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, understands that this application is administrative in nature and its intent is to legalize development that were constructed prior to consultation with the municipality and did not have the appropriate level of approvals legalizing the undertaking. In addition, the work undertaken does not meet your current comprehensive zoning bylaw regarding guest cabins and may have required a septic evaluation for condition and/or increased flows. Specifically, as I understand your current zoning, guest cabins are not permitted to have sanitary facilities up to and including both cooking or sanitary facilities, gray and black water. Extra self-contained suites can be used for a number of purposes, i.e. to facilitate Airbnbs, etc., adding to issues regarding short-term rentals that many municipalities are grappling with. Secondary suites in waterfront locations do not address the province's goal of achieving affordable housing. Considering the nature of development and that this proposal is asking for permission after the fact, MECP would not support this application and would urge the municipality to take whatever corrective action it deems necessary. Thank you for your circulation and your ongoing consideration of the environment. John." End quote. Agent Laura Stone, as well as the property owner, Joanne Patricia Charlebois, are both on the line to answer any questions should council or the public have any. Further, if any member of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so that we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, we have people online that would like to speak for or against this application. We have Joanne Patricia Charlebois and Laura Stone. Would either of you like to speak to this application?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Good morning, Honorable Mayor Lampstead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, Councillor Cadigan, Councillor Frazen, and Councillor Braybook. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration today. I would like to introduce ourselves. Joanne and I have been cottaging on the Mississauga Lake for 32 years with our 3 children. Our children were, when we first started cottaging, 7, 5, and 3. And when we started our cottage journey, they are now 39, 38, and 35. all married with children of their own. We have 7.5 grandchildren, aged 10, 6, 3, 2, and 2, and 18 months, 6 months, and 1 due in March. And the family keeps growing. Our children have had wonderful memories of summers at the lake, and we want those experiences for their children. We hope that we hope you are cottagers as well, and you are. Then you would know and fully understand what a privilege it is to have a place to share with family, creating memories that bond together in a way like nowhere else can. Our dream started 32 years ago, was to have a place that would become a family legacy, to be cherished and enjoyed generation after generation. We have been managing, but as I mentioned earlier, our family is growing and we need a little extra sleeping space to keep our family cottaging together. We respectfully request that you help us do so by granting us approval to create additional sleeping space we require for our growing family. I would like to add that during the last 32 years, we lived in the Yukon for 18 years, now in Calgary, but continue to cottage on Mississauga Lake. It's our very special place and a place that binds our family as such, as we have only shared it with our family and very close friends, and only when Joanne and I are there, always in reverence and gratitude for the privilege to ensure our dream of a cottage legacy to be enjoyed for generations to come. I would also like to add a few comments based on the report of the ministry. Pardon? Yes. I'm a little flustered, but this and nervous. You can probably tell.
Just take your time, and we're here to listen to you. So.
All right, I appreciate it. I just want to repeat that the cottage is only used when Joanne and I are there, and even if our children would like to use the cottage when we are not there, we do not allow that for various reasons. So if we don't even let our kids use the cottage when we are not there, we are extremely private people, and I would never, ever entertain the thought of leasing, renting, letting other people use our property in any way, shape, or form, including Airbnb or Verbro or whatever the name of that company is. I will let Laura, our representative, speak on our behalf going forward. And I may want to add something after she speaks or answer any of your questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any members of council have questions of Mr. Charlebois? Okay, I'm seeing none. Laura Stone, would you like to speak?
I don't see Laura Stone on the line. If Laura happens to be joined under another name, you can use the raise a hand feature so we know to unmute you. Oh. Dan, someone under the name Daniel Charlebois is raising their hand. Is that you, Laura?
Oh, this is me. Can you hear me?
We're not sure who me is.
Sorry, it's Laura Stone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how that ended up working out. So good afternoon, Mayor Lambshead and Council. I am Laura Stone, and I am the planning consultant for this application as a subcontracted planner for KMD Community Planning. This application is to permit essentially two uses on a waterfront property, namely a guest cabin, which is located in an accessory structure, in this case a garage, with accompanying washroom facilities to be located within the guest cabin that will be tied into the existing class 4 septic system, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But it was recently inspected by Buckhorn Sand and Gravel, and that report is forthcoming to Peterborough Public Health. I guess the age of the septic, it's not so easy for public health to be able to pull permits for properties that are a little bit older. So that was the issue when I had spoken to Kathleen at Peterborough Public Health. This property is located at 70 Spur 8, which is off of Fire Route 130 with frontage onto Mississauga Lake. As Sarah mentioned, there is an existing cottage with an existing 2-story garage. The garage is located beyond 30 meters from the high water mark. The subject of our application is this 2-story garage. So at present, there is a long-standing non-conforming guest house use on the 2nd story of the garage, which also contains a non-conforming washroom facility. This use pre-existed the purchase of the property by my clients. As I've outlined in my planning justification report, this application conforms to the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, both the local and county official plans, and it does meet the general intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the municipality of Trent Lakes. The report, which you have a copy of, outlines my planning rationale for support of this application. But to start, this garage was built approximately 20 years ago, and at the time, the property owners, not my clients, the property owners prior to them, had received a building permit for this structure. Almost immediately, the 2nd story became the guest cabin on the property. During the purchase of this property, by my clients, the then real estate listing described the guest cabin to be in this loft or 2nd story area of the cottage. So I've read through Mr. Jones's report, and I do feel it is absolutely pertinent to clarify 2 issues. So 1, the issue of safety and location. The photo used in the report from Mr. Jones looks as though the cottage is located just a few steps away. In fact, as displayed and discussed in my planning justification report, the main cottage is an abrupt drop of about 25 feet from the garage guest cabin structure. I did attach pictures of the garage, which show the view towards the lake. In those pictures, you can only see the roof of the cottage. So that gives you an idea of how steep the drop is. And for extra clarity, a vehicle can't drive the difference between that parking area just below the garage, as shown in Mr. Jones's report, and the entrance to the cottage, as the terrain is just too steep. This is important because it brings a safety factor into the application, particularly at night, when my clients' family members, which, as you've heard, include parents and young children or their grandchildren, have to access the washroom for the guest cabin. The second issue that I want to get into is the issue of a secondary dwelling. As defined in the zoning bylaw, a dwelling has sanitary and cooking facilities. There is absolutely no intention to include cooking facilities in this guest cabin. And I'd like to just introduce council to the idea that you are presented with an opportunity here to write into the bylaw that this guest cabin would not include cooking facilities and shall not be eligible as a secondary dwelling. To date, cooking facilities have not been added to the guest cabin by either my clients or the former property owners. So by being written into the bylaw that cooking facilities are absolutely prohibited, the municipality has a tool or an instrument of law to ensure all future uses are compliant, and further, that any future property owner has a complete understanding of how that guest cabin can be used. I would like to say at this time too that I was not informed of the correspondence received by the MNRF, but I can confirm that since the intention of this application is very much not to create a secondary dwelling unit, and most certainly not a rental Airbnb, the application to permit a washroom facility in a guest cabin is still consistent with the use of an accessory structure to the main cottage use. So going further with this, I would like to talk a little bit about precedent. So today, council has another opportunity to look at a good example of precedent. The guest cabin is an inherited issue that was brought to my client's attention when they went to obtain permits to renovate the existing guest cabin. Following the identification of the non-conforming uses, my clients then hired a team of professionals to work with the municipality to bring these uses into compliance with the zoning bylaw by creating an enforceable bylaw that permits a washroom facility in a guest cabin without the ability to later put in cooking facilities. It is suggested in the report that the guest cabin can be permitted in the second story of the garage, save and except for the washroom facilities. It was suggested to me by municipal staff during my pre-consultation meeting that perhaps an outhouse could be placed near the rear of the garage where the exterior stairs to the guest cabin are located. And I would really like to stress at this time to council that a class 4 septic system is inspected every single time that it's emptied and further inspected on a rotational basis by the municipality. This is far superior to an unregulated outhouse in regards to the environmental well-being of the lake. So to summarize, this application is very much a site-specific request for relief from the non-compliance of the guest cabin and accompanying washroom facilities. The specific topography of this property lends itself to permitting a washroom in the guest cabin for safety purposes, which is then tied into a septic system that is regularly inspected. I respectfully ask that council consider the approval of this application, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Anyone have any questions of Laura? I'm seeing no questions. I just have a comment. The elevation difference from the guest cabin garage and the cottage is enormous. Would be very dangerous to be traveling from that to the cottage in the middle of the night to use facilities. That does present a little bit of a health and safety issue. Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from staff? I'm hearing none, seeing, do we have any other hands up to speak to this file?
I'm not seeing any other hands.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments. I think that's it for now on that. We will revisit it after we come out of closed. Okay, we can move on to item 6.2 of our agenda, which is zoning bylaw amendment 2236. Can you please speak to the files, Sarah Delamar?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a public meeting for file number 22-36 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by property owner Teresa Lynn Decker for the property located at 96 White Lake Drive. The subject lands have a shoreline frontage of approximately 78 meters and a lot area of approximately 0.17 hectares. The lot was the subject of an application for zoning bylaw amendment B 2019-106 approved on November 19, 2019. This reduced the water yard setback to 22 meters to allow for the construction of a dwelling and deck having a combined floor area of 256.5 square meters. The bylaw also recognized an existing 108 square foot storage building as a boathouse located at the water's edge. The applicant entered into a site plan agreement in 2019, contingent with the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of the application is to seek relief from section 4.2.5 of the zoning bylaw, which restricts the height of a detached garage in the shoreline zones to 4.9 meters. The applicant is proposing a two-story garage having a height of 6.8 meters. The ground floor area of the garage is proposed to be 59.5 square meters and a gross floor area of 119 square meters. It is noted that the ground floor area of the garage would take the form of 3 separate storage areas, given that the building is proposing to use shipping containers as a building material. It is also noted that the actual planning application form submitted by the applicant indicated that the proposal was to construct a garage with a ground floor area of 800 square feet, and it is understood that the applicant has confirmed this to be their intention. The applicant provided a written overview of their proposal. This summary identified that the garage design is similar to the house, and the prefabricated roof trusses are the primary reason for the requested height exemption. It identifies that the building will require no plumbing and will not be insulated or habitable. The main floor is proposed to be used to store equipment. The upper floor is proposed to be used for woodworking, crafts, and storage. The applicant also identified that they have recently recently relocated their former residence and had a garage with a floor area of 3,200 square feet. There's a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Chris notes that it is the experience of the building and planning departments that where the upper floors of detached garages have been created, legally or illegally, they have been typically utilized as living space. Chris mentions that council should be mindful of the reality of this space, if approved in its current form, will be a space that will very easily be converted to a habitable space and therefore would set a precedent for future applications. On this basis, Chris recommends that council considers the application in the context of whether they would support the upper floor of the proposed garage being utilized as a guest cabin. Chris further analyzes the new legislative changes to the Planning Act and states that because Trent Lakes does not have any land serviced with municipal sanitary and water services, the municipality is not obligated but rather has discretion to determine if additional residential units are an appropriate land use within its rural and shoreline areas. Chris recommends that in order to move forward with the application and achieve a positive planning outcome and establish a good precedent, the amending bylaw should proactively avoid any compliance issues in the future by authorizing the second story to be utilized for storage or a guest cabin. The amending bylaw would authorize appropriate exemptions to the definitions and regulations for guest cabins and private garages to accommodate either use on the basis that the building would not contain kitchen or bathroom facilities. The amending bylaw would prohibit the use of the garage for additional dwelling units and would prohibit the establishment of an independent guest cabin elsewhere on the applicant's lot. In conjunction, the landowner's current site plan agreement would be amended to authorize the new building. Peterborough Public Health commented on the proposal, stating no objection as long as the minimum horizontal clearance to the septic tank of 1.5 meters and 5 meters to the distribution pipe is maintained. The Ministry of Environment commented, stating no objection to the proposal. Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board also commented on the proposal, citing no identifiable concerns or issues related to the proposal. Property owner Terry Decker is on the line to answer any questions should council or the public have any. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission, but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so that we are able to promote you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone in the gallery for or against this application? Please raise your hand. I think I have Teresa Lynn Decker. Are you available for comment?
Terry, you've been unmuted. You'll just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought someone was asking questions. No, we just wanted to clarify that there is no insulation or plumbing, and that the ground floor level is, it's a 20 by 40 building. So just to confirm and clarify the square footage there.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone on the council have any questions? I'm seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Thank you, through your Mayor Lamson. It's actually a question for Sarah. Sarah, it's not entirely clear to me from Chris's report whether he is recommending approval of an exemption for the height restriction from 16 feet to 22 feet. I know he has some other requirements, but it wasn't clear to me whether he's suggesting we should approve that exemption or not, specifically the roof height.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Yes, it's my understanding from reading the report and conversing with Chris that he is supportive of the roof height exception. He just wants both uses identified for the upper floor of the proposed building.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make a motion?
Yeah.
Can you hear us still here or?
Sorry.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh,
Hi
sorry.
there. Hi there. Good afternoon. It's Craig Ray, Terry's husband. I just wanted to reiterate that the finishings of the exterior of this garage are definitely to mimic the house, the finishings of the house. So the whole exterior will be cladded in hardy board finish, and the Douglas fir post and beam look is going to mimic what we've done with the house dwelling in order to keep the continuity on the property.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I also have Charles Johnson with his hand raised. I'll unmute you now.
Charles, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here. My name is Charles Johnson. I actually live right next door to the property in question at 86 White Lake Drive. I'm here to speak in support of this application. I've seen the drawings of this building. I believe that this garage will actually be an attractive addition to our neighborhood. I also believe that the slope of the roof would make it very uncomfortable for a second floor to be used as a living space. Although technically, I guess if you're short people, it might work, but that's not clearly what it's not intended for. I'd also like to note that this is a low density area. We're all on large lots. This garage will be well away from the shoreline and will not block anybody's view of the shoreline or of anything else. In fact, I think that this is a tastefully designed building, and it's going to be a very positive addition to the neighborhood. I see no reason why this application should not be allowed, especially considering Chris Jones' comments. And I thank you all for your time and hope that you approve this application.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none, I think we are done with that file till we move on to the next section. Now, I would entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting, and I see Councillor Braybrook and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. All in favor? Okay, thank you, Rich. That is passed. Carried. We are now moving on to our section 7.1. Sarah Delamarter, our junior planner, would you like to speak?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There's a public meeting held for file number 22-34, and at this time, staff are recommending that Council 1 receives the report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and 2, that Council directs staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment for Council's consideration in a manner that reflects the recommendations of the external planning consultant's report, which would include permitting the guest cabin without plumbing facilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone have any comments or questions or prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I'll make a motion that we receive the report and direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration in a manner that reflects the recommendations of this report.
Okay, do I have a seconder of that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan. Do I have any other comments? I will call for a vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to section 7.2. Sarah Delamarter, our junior planner, can you speak to that file?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There was a public meeting held for file number 22-36, and at this time, staff are recommending that Council 1 receives the report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and 2, the Council directs staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment for Council's consideration in a manner that reflects the recommendations of the external planning consultant's report, which would include relief for the height and permit the 2 uses for the guest cabin and storage space above the garage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion for that? I see Councillor Braybrook.
I make a motion to receive the report and direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment and an amended site plan agreement for council's consideration in a manner that reflects the recommendations of this report.
I have Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any comments? I see Councillor Braybrook, yes.
Just a quick comment. It's always nice to hear neighbors in support of of people coming forward with their plans, and it added a bit more information for us, and as far as the aesthetics is concerned. So thank you for the input from the neighbor.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we will move on to section 8 of our agenda, which is presentations. Nancy Johnson, I believe you have a presentation about our strategic initiatives. If you can unmute yourself and.
I did, and now I've got my camera up here, so I think we're good.
Sure.
Thank you.
Very good.
We'll just get the presentation up. Okay. Is the presentation up there? Oh, okay. So I guess I have to share it. Sorry. Every one of these is different. Every time we go to do a presentation. Okay. All right, here we go. Show screen. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. How are we there?
That's it. You've got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So good afternoon, Mayor and members of council and staff. I'm happy to be back in Trent Lakes again to present to you the final economic development, tourism, and recovery strategy plan. So this may be familiar to some people because I've presented this a couple of times, so bear with me, but I have made a few changes on it. So first of all, why a strategic plan? So it's really about continuing to build on that strong foundation that you have. It also allows a municipality to be strategic with its resources, and it also creates positive community change through a stronger and diversified and resilient community, resilient economy. So just to go over economic development briefly, economic development is a program and not a strategy, or not a project. So it's a program. It's ongoing, it's fluid, and it really is a long-term investment. So that little diagram that's there is really how complex economic development is. It's all about preparing, strategizing, and economic doing. So the preparation, the strategizing, you're in the economic development strategy now, and then the next sort of element is doing. So there's real connectivity between all of these different things, and it's not linear, it's circular, things are happening all at the same time, so there's a lot going on with economic development. So a little bit about the research and consultations that we did. The first thing that we want to just go over is that this Trent Lakes Economic Development Tourism Recovery Strategic Plan is really based on a comprehensive understanding of Trent Lakes, of the community, of the economy, the businesses, the stakeholders, as well as their collective aspirations. The process we followed, we really started back in June of 2022, and we started with a document review, data analysis, situational analysis. We had a great community tour of the area. There were consultations, working sessions, and then the economic development strategic plan. Most of you were involved in a number, either one or more of these different steps in the process. As mentioned, we did do the document review and a situational analysis, which I hope everybody has had a chance to look at the situational analysis. That's a great document that just provides a lot of background information on your community, and it's something that you can use for various other strategies or whatever comes up, but it's really a great something don't put it on a shelf, use it. The second thing that we did was consultations. We did consultations with, we did one-on-one interviews. We also did online survey. We did working sessions in person. We had consulted with 133 stakeholders, which we thought was a great number of stakeholders from the community. The online survey was up for approximately a month in June or in July, and so we did get quite a few people participating in that. And the working sessions, we did have people in person and got some great feedback. That was the working sessions are all about developing the actions based on the results that we got through the consultations. So we really did work really closely with staff to develop these doable and realistic actions. The other thing that we did was a score. So this was based on all of the research and the consultations that we did. So basically it's strengths, challenges, opportunities, aspirations, and results. The full score is in the document, in the strategic plan. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't. It's basically it's the McSweeney score is similar to a SWOT, but we've just expanded it a bit. Just so that you know, for those that haven't been involved, that we did present to council the draft strategy back in September of 2022. We presented it also to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and both council and EDAC provided us with input and changes that were required. We developed the final Economic Development Strategic Plan based on those comments, and then that was provided to the municipality, and then Rachel and I worked on the implementation plan together, which is taking all of the actions and actually putting in the lead, the people that are partners in it, financial sort of implications and timelines. So that's not actually part of the strategic plan, but that's a different document that is kind of a working document that you can use over the years. And then obviously we're at the final presentation of the final strategic plan to our new council. So I just want to reiterate that this is your strategic plan. It's the Trent Lakes strategic plan. And this plan is based on your community's input, and it's unique to Trent Lakes. So I just want to make sure that you understand it really was, it's not a McSweeney plan, it's Trent Lakes. I'm briefly going to go over the goals, objectives, and actions. There are quite a few of them, but first of all, I just wanted to mention that there are some key challenges that you do have with regards to, like, with Trent Lakes. It's, you know that you have a population that's small, growing, and aging. There's a lack of service lands for development. There's a seasonality of Trent Lakes economy, also population, and you have a large geographic area, which I know you all understand. The other thing that, the other sort of challenge you have is that you have a high cost of housing, and your employment, which seems to be about close to $1 million on average, and the average employment income is about $1,400 lower than the Ontario average, which is about $52,000. So just something to keep in mind. So as we go through the goals and objectives and actions, there are 4 goals that have been set out, 8 objectives, and 38 actions. Seems like a lot, but it's over 5 years, so it's still a lot. So the first goal is to improve the commercial core of Buckhorn to better support residents and visitors. So really, why is this important? Commercial cores are really create a critical mass of activities where commercial, cultural, and civic activities are concentrated. And Buckhorn is the largest commercial core, so it's really helping to improve that community. And really the first the objective is that it's basically improving Buckhorn. So it's around bringing more business in, creating a more visual, like a visual streetscape, that sort of thing. So there's really only 3 actions within that goal and objective. The second goal is to be a 4-season tourism destination. And why is that important? You have a great summer, spring, summer, fall, but tourism assets, but expanding that into the winter will really help to diversify and create new business opportunities for Trent Lakes. So there are 2 objectives: becoming a year-round tourism destination and enhancing that visitor experience. So there's 9 actions under that goal. The third goal is about developing a business-friendly municipality that supports existing business and is open to new business. So it's really about being business-friendly and how you can attract new businesses and retain existing businesses. The objectives there are being investment-ready and business-friendly, supporting local business, and addressing labor attraction and retention challenges. So there's 15 actions under that objective. And the last one is building community through cohesiveness. It's about bringing people together, building cohesiveness, and that allows and opens up new challenges for communication, which sounds like it's still difficult to get that information out to the community. So suggesting some different things that can be done around building partnerships to support business and building community cohesiveness. So 11 actions under that objective, under those objectives. And that's all I have. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Any members of council have questions of Nancy? I'm seeing no questions.
Awesome.
I think that's a fantastic presentation. I think we have a lot of things to do ahead of us.
That's it. Yes. I just
much.
wanted to mention to you as well that we're obviously, if there's any issues or concerns, or you have questions, or you want to talk about anything, we're always there. Give us a call.
Glad I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. If I may make a comment.
Sure, absolutely.
Great, thanks. Thanks very much, Nancy. This was a very professionally done project and appreciate this. I'm grateful that you've been able to focus our attention and our future efforts on what I would call the vital few. Some reports come in and there are 200 things that you need to do, and there's no way that any organization can ever even approach that. So I think it's important that you've been able to narrow down the 4 most important things we need to focus our efforts on. The second comment I want to make is I'm very grateful we now have this, because in my mind, and I hope in council's mind, this will be the roadmap for the next term's Economic Development Advisory Committee. They have, some goals and objectives and specific actions that, should they as volunteers take on some of that, that's great that they can do that in conjunction with our new Economic Development Officer and of course other staff. So having this in place, I think is absolutely foundational for us being able to move forward and ensure that we have a resilient, sustainable economy in Trent Lakes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments, folks? Well said, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Okay, anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Franzen.
Motion to receive the report.
Okay. And I have a seconder for that. I see Councillor Cadigan. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Nancy, for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on now to section 9 of our agenda, which is delegations. And we have Dimitra. Would you like to unmute yourself and share your webcam if you can?
Demetra, it looks like you are still self-muted if you wanted to unmute yourself.
Sorry, how's this? Well, greetings, everyone. I would like to begin by stating that when we purchased our property in May of 2014, it was a vacant lot. We added value over the years so that the municipality was able to collect more taxes. We did everything as instructed and followed the municipality's bylaws. We obtained a permit, installed, and had Peterborough Public Health inspect and approve a full-size septic system. We obtained a permit and erected a building to the municipality's specifications for a recreational bush camp. We were given a 911 number after a representative from the municipality came to inspect the size and/or width of our driveway so as we do not have a false sense of security in the case emergency vehicles are not able to access our property. This was in the summer of 2016. Nothing was said of the winter months. False sense of security indeed. In 2022, we received a bill for supplemental taxes charged for 2020, 2021, and 2022. In all my years as a property owner, I never heard of supplemental taxes. The municipality received $3,560.06 in 2 installments over a short period of 2 months. We had no choice but to pay. Interest rates would be charged and the tax bill grows. We do not receive any direct services from the municipality. I was told by Donna Tigert at the time that even though we do not have garbage collection, sewer hookup, water supply, hydro supply, children and or grandchildren that attend local schools, our property taxes go towards funding emergency services that we have access to. How is an ambulance or fire truck to reach us in case of an emergency if the road is not clear of snow and ice? During the 2022 Christmas break, there was an excess of 3 feet of snow blocking the entry to Fire Access Road from the 507. Add to that the snowbanks that the plows left when clearing the 507. We were trapped for 4 days with no way in or out. My husband recently suffered a stroke and may be prone to others. How is an ambulance to come to our aid in case of an emergency? Emergency care that I was told our tax dollars pay for. Last summer, I went to great lengths to prove to staff and elected officials, some of who are now present in other positions, that the municipality of Trent Lakes is the leaseholder of Crown land directly adjacent to our property. In effect, you are our closest neighbor and you are not being a very good one. The lease held by the municipality is for the purposes of aggregate mining, not for target practicing, not for camping, not for building fires, not for dumping garbage, nor for fouling the land without use of an outhouse or Johnny on the spot. It took an OPP report number E220780127, to convince the powers that be to erect no trespassing, dumping of garbage prohibited signs, and a barrier of sorts to curb but not put an end to these illegal activities. These activities continue into the winter months. As late as November of 2022, I reported a group having an open fire at that spot, assuredly without benefit of a burn permit, which we are obligated to have for any open fire on our property. The target practicing also continues, and we still fear getting shot just walking on our property.
Demetra, I think we're supposed to be speaking about winter maintenance. I think that's what's on our agenda.
Yes, I am getting to that. Thank you.
On our agenda, so please speak to the winter maintenance part of your.
Yes. So I am getting to that. So the municipality is responsible and liable for any injury to our person and our property from illegal activities. The longer it takes for emergency vehicles to respond to the scene, the greater the damage. Fire access road must remain clear year-round and at all times. That was my point, that these activities continue into the winter months. An emergency preparedness plan should cover all corners of the municipality's jurisdiction. So the taxes we pay should at least cover the maintenance of a road, public or no, to which the municipality holds a lease, as do other private enterprises. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Do anyone have any questions or comments?
I
I
have a
see
question.
Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
Through the mayor, Dimitri, how are you currently accessing your property? Is there somebody that you contract to plow you out?
No, we do not. I believe Parnell Quarry does plow the road, but when the quarry is closed, there is no one that would clear the road. But at the same time, the municipality also holds a lease for aggregate mining on the same road. So I don't see how that is any different from Acon or Parnell Quarry being responsible for clearing the road.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure that we have a aggregate entire road. I think it's just one small section that abuts to.
In my mind, it's the same situation.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Any comments from staff? Okay. Any other comments from any members of council? Or questions? No, I'm seeing none. Okay.
I'd be willing to make a motion to deny the request.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I have Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dimitri. Dimitra. Okay, we can move on now to section 9.2 of our agenda. Laura Stone, Planning Director, One Planning. Would you like to speak, Laura?
Hi. So I would actually ask for Holly Richards Conley to speak first. We're speaking to the same item.
Okay, thank you very much. Holly or Richards Conley, are you there? You can unmute yourself and share your webcam if you so choose.
Hi there, Holly Richards. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Holly. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know that there have been quite a few memos going back and forth on the planning application referenced in the deputation. So I wanted to do a really quick recap for you to ensure that this project is super clear and easy to follow. We are proposing the tear down of a very small cottage built almost 60 years ago. We are also proposing to replace the existing cottage with a larger one to accommodate their larger family. We brought this file in front of council on September 6, 2022 for consideration. At that meeting, the council had some questions about the lakeside timber area, but after listening to my presentation, seemed to be in favor of allowing the timber area to proceed as long as we got an archaeological assessment completed. At the time, we already had the assessment done, and it was noted in the planner's report for that meeting, but this was missed during the presentation to council. 3 days after the September 6th meeting, I requested a follow-up meeting with Sarah Dillamarter, Adele Arbor, and Chris Jones to see what we could work out. The Van Trescas and I immediately agreed to decrease the lot coverage of the property by downsizing the detached garage, eliminating the need to include this as one of the zoning reliefs. We suggested a small scale back of the timber space at this time also, but was told during that meeting that they couldn't provide any feedback at that time. And in 2 subsequent follow-up emails from myself, I was provided with no further feedback. Given that time was an issue and we wanted to get this back in front of council as possible with winter coming quickly, we didn't make any further changes to the timber area. It was also at this time that we started working with Laura Stone and community planning to help us navigate what had become a complex project. At this time, I'd like to reiterate to council, again, what I told council back in September in the hope this will also help you today understand this project a little better. The proposed timber frame area is an outdoor living space for this family. We are seeing these types of designs on almost every single project we are working on lately because it makes sense. If you own a waterfront property, you tend to spend the majority of your time in this area. This outdoor space is almost entirely located inside the dwelling's footprint. Only 4 feet or just over a meter of this sticks out past the house green room. If this space was entirely protruding from the house or was a separate space entirely, I would understand council's concern. However, it rests directly between the main bedroom of the house and the dining room and screen room. It's directly connected under the roof line of the house to all of the other main living areas. An important point on this file is that the house and the timber area are not encroaching further into the water yard. We are maintaining the existing water setback. Further to that point, although the 10.8-meter water setback, the new cottage is located almost 100% behind the location of the existing cottage, but due to the angled shoreline, measured water setback is remaining as is, and this can be viewed on the site plan provided to the town. As of September, these areas are where families gather to get out of the sun, or on a rainy day where you read a book or eat lunch. As we are spending more and more quality time in our homes, these are the type of spaces families are looking for. In conclusion, I'd like to add that we have our Peterborough Public Health. We have a completed archaeological assessment. Cultural significance was found, and after the September 6th meeting, did change the detached garage size so that we now comply with the maximum coverage on this property. So 0 overdevelopment is okay. Further to this, no trees or natural vegetation will be removed from the shoreline for the project. In fact, we see huge benefit adding to the existing shoreline with native vegetation, trees, and plantings to protect it from any potential erosion. Further, shoreline restoration and the ventrescas will replace and add to any lot where the new house is built. Finally, it should be noted that no neighbors have provided any concerns or comments about this application to council, either before the September 6th meeting or any time after. Thank you for your time. I'll pass it to Laura Stone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Jumbly there, but we got the gist of it, I think. Go ahead, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Holly. So just as some background, I was brought into this application following negotiation between the applicant, Holly Richards-Conley, who you just heard from, and the municipality to outline the provincial and local policies that this application conforms to and to justify the planning aspect of the project. As I noted in my planning justification report, which I believe council has had an opportunity to review, this application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the official plan, both local and county, and is also in keeping with the uses permitted in waterfront areas in the municipality of Trent Lakes. This is important because we are not applying for a use that is inconsistent with the zoning for this property. Rather, we are looking to rebuild a cottage that maintains the existing established setback to the water of 10.6 meters with a larger footprint than existing and relief for a side yard setback. In the notice that was circulated, the use of the timber frame area is not discussed because it is not a planning issue, to put it quite simply. The footprint of the habitable part of a building includes areas under the roofline, and that is what we are here to discuss. The roofline of this building, as Holly mentioned, does not extend further towards the water than what is considered to be the established setback of the existing cottage structure. The proposed side yard setback of 3.74 meters is similar to what is currently existing, which is 4.15 meters, or a difference of 1.3 feet, and the change is considered to be relatively minor. In regards to the increase in size, Holly did mention that this cottage is about 60 years old, so I'd just like to remind council that the existing cottage is one of those older original cottages. It has a very small footprint. So when cottages are being rebuilt today, as you all know, whether it's a rebuild or if it's on a vacant lot, structures are generally bigger to accommodate families with children and grandchildren. So this brings me to my next point. The property is not intended to be overdeveloped, and actually it cannot be considered overdeveloped because it conforms to the bylaw lot coverage requirements as outlined in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. In terms of impact, the setback to the water for the proposed building is not changing from what's existing. And as Holly mentioned earlier, in regards to the shape of the shoreline, if you were to view this property from the lake, the cottage will look further back than what is existing today. So just to reiterate a couple things, there's no archaeological impact, no hydrogeological impact, no technical impact of this rebuild. And finally, and just as importantly, it should be noted that no neighbors have provided any concerns or comments about this application to council, either before the September 6th meeting or anytime afterwards, which has a breadth today of approximately 5 months since the notice was circulated. So at this time, I'd like to thank council for their consideration, and I am very happy that Holly and I have been given the opportunity to speak at this meeting. So Just lastly, I request that both Holly and myself remain unmuted in the event that we can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Does any members of council have any comments or questions of Laura or Holly? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I have one question through you, Mayor, regarding the boathouse that appears to be on the neighbor's property. There's no mention of that. Is that included in the space, square footage occupying the lot?
I can answer that through you, Mayor. The boathouse space, the area is included in the overall lot coverage. We include all structures when we're calculating the lot coverage. It includes the proposed cottage, the proposed detached garage, as well as existing boathouse.
Okay.
Again, through you, Mayor Lambstead,
go ahead.
Is that including the square footage that's not actually on the lot?
Yes, I included. I don't know if you have access to the site plan that was provided to the township, but the surveyor does provide total square footage, which is 32.2 square meters, which is used to calculate the overall lot coverage.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I have a comment. I think the 4 feet that's protruding beyond the front of the building, if it was actually walls, doors, and windows, it would be permitted, correct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sure Holly can follow this up, the way that the notice of the bylaw is written, yes, if the bylaw were to be passed, it looks as though that would be the case.
So we're talking about having an open space rather than a building space.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It just seems a little odd that you could build the building there, but you can't have an open covered roof there. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm seeing none. Okay, see, Councillor Braybrook, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mayor, on the heels of your comment there, is staff able to comment to your comments, Mayor?
I'm sure we have staff available. Adele or Sarah, would you like to comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a report I prepared for today's agenda, and I'd be happy to go through that report at that time. But if you'd like me to answer your question, I just would like to remind council that each application is based on its own merits. And in Mr. Jones' planning report, he talks about the portion of the proposed dwelling that is within the water yard. And the increase to the expansion of the dwelling within the water yard is approximately 276%. So there's numerous things when we have a zoning bylaw amendment application that we look at, and it's not just a matter of an open air deck or having a structure. In any case, you can't get any closer to the high water mark than what is existing, and that's what the bylaw says. However, when we have an application before us, we look at many things, and the majority of the portion of this dwelling is located within the water yard, and that is a concern. I hope I've answered the question.
Yep, thank you. I mean, it's not that you just look at that 4 feet that's protruding, you look at a lot of other factors.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, may I follow up?
Yes, please.
One of the things when we talk about expansion of when we're tearing down smaller cottages and numbers like 276% or 376, it sounds like a really, really big number. But when you look at properties where the cottage was very tiny, which if you look at all older sort of cottages, they were hunt camp or fishing camp, and the expansion sounds a lot larger, but when you take into consideration the original cottage was so tiny, of course those numbers are quite a bit larger than what the original cottage was. It's just it's a game of numbers rather than actual, oh my gosh, it's 300% larger. It's going to be no matter what, because the original cottage was way smaller.
Thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. We can receive that information. I would entertain a motion. I see Councillor Franzen.
I imagine we can lump them together in one motion.
Sure. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. The motion to receive.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Armstrong. All in favor? The motion to receive is carried. Thank you very much, Laura and Holly, for your presentation. Delegation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we can move on to section 10 of our agenda, which is staff reports. And we have Evan Greger. If you're on the line, could you please unmute yourself? If you have a comment there, Councillor Brandon.
She's going to ask for a 5-minute break.
You can do that. Can we take a 5-minute recess? I don't think we Okay, we are back in session after our little recess. We have item 10.1, which is staff reports. We have Evan Greger to speak about Granite Ridge Estates Phase 1. You can unmute yourself.
Wonderful.
Evan. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lambshead, through you, Mayor, to members of council. Before you today is a report regarding Granite Ridge Estates Phase 1. As many of you may be aware or may not, Granite Ridge has been a long ongoing project. I think it started in about 2008 with building some homes, and then they're hoping to move into Phase 2. So this report just is to get basically your support to move ahead with assuming the road network. The big thing about assuming the road network is that we will be able to plow and provide the winter maintenance on those roads. We've received the proper documentation from the engineers regarding road compactions and the makeup of the sub base within the road. We're comfortable with that, so that's why we're proceeding with this. There are a few outstanding items not specific to the road, and that's the reason for the third recommendation and agreement between the municipality and Granite Ridge Estates. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer it.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. Anybody have any questions? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. Thanks, Evan. The two outstanding items, I would like to understand more about those. I mean, we had an agreement, certain things are supposed to be done. They weren't done, they're still outstanding. What confidence do we have that, they will be done under a new contract? So I'd just like to understand those a little bit better and why they weren't done.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, through you, Mayor Lambshead. So it wasn't specific when I said a couple, I meant more of a few. So they're specific to, there's some confirmation on some easement conveyances. So there's some stormwater easements that need to be conveyed to the municipality. There's also some just confirmation letters from Peterborough County, sign-offs on that. We have confidence that we're going to get those because the wording within the agreement, the developer will not be able to proceed with phase 2 until we get the rest of phase 1 cleaned up. And because phase 1 is basically built out, they're looking to push for phase 2. So this is sort of our leverage, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I think most of the things that are outstanding are just legal tie-ins, get it finished up. So thank you very much for that response. Any other questions or comments? Is there anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Franzen. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to receive Evan's report and support his recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a seconder, is Councillor Braybrook. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. We have no other reports till we get to 10.4.1. Sarah Delamarter, our junior planner, could you speak to consent application B12122 and such?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just having a hard time with the script loading, so just bear with me a second here. Okay, you got it up. Thank you for your patience. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On today's agenda, there's a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-121-22 and B-122-22 submitted by agent Amanda Timmermans on behalf of the property owner Mackenzie Forkadot. The subject land is located on a vacant lot on Reed Street, and the application conforms to the official plan as the proposed use is residential on all 3 lots, and the current land use designation for all parcels is rural. The severed parcels will be required to undertake rezoning, as the rural residential zone is a more compatible zone for the size of the proposed lots. The retained parcel will also require to undertake a rezoning, as the EIS that was submitted in support of the application confirmed wetland features on the property. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application subject to the following 6 conditions. 1, that $1,000 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the municipality for each new severed lot. 2, the rezoning of the severed parcels to the satisfaction of the municipality. 3, the rezoning of the retained parcel to the satisfaction of the municipality. 4, a consent agreement is to be entered into between the applicant and the municipality and registered on title at the applicant's expense, which would address the recommendations of the environmental impact study and subsequent peer review dated July 2022 and October 2022, respectively. 5, that the entrances to the severed and retained lots be approved by the municipality of Trent Lake's Director of Public Works and installed by the applicant. And 6, that if the reference plan confirms that any portion of the traveled road is located on the severed lot, the lands occupied by the traveled road, including additional land measuring 10 meters from the center line of the traveled road, be transferred to the municipality as road dedication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Anyone have any questions? Seeing no hands. Any other comments? Anyone prepared to make a motion? I'm seeing no hand. Councillor Braybrook.
Make a motion to accept the recommendations with the conditions that were stated.
Do I have a seconder? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to item 10.4.2, and I believe it's Adele Arbor, our planner, is going to speak to that file.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. The property owners of Unit 37 in Oak Orchard Plan a Condominium have applied to remove the holding provision on their lands. The property owners are not intending to propose any new construction or alter the property at this time and have satisfied all conditions related to the removal of the hold, which includes the submission of an archaeological assessment along with the ministry letter identifying that the assessment has been entered into the public register of archaeological reports. They've entered into a development agreement with the municipality, and they've also provided documentation to confirm engagement with Curve Lake First Nation in the preparation and finalization of the archaeological assessment. The notice of intention to pass an amending bylaw to remove the holding symbol was given in accordance with Section 36 of the Planning Act. Planning staff are supportive of the removal of the holding provision on Unit 37 and recommend that Council receive this report and support the approval of the bylaw to remove the holding symbol for Unit 37, which is on today's Council agenda for consideration.
Thank you very much, Adele. Anyone have any questions of Adele in regards to the holding? Go ahead, Councillor Francis.
Yeah, just one simple question is, how many more units are outstanding with the H symbol, Adele?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe we have quite a few. I can recall maybe we've only done about 6 removal of the hold. So as people deem it necessary to remove the hold, they have been bringing forward their application. And I know we have a pending application for a zoning bylaw amendment coming to council very shortly. So I'd say 6, 7 applications so far.
Okay, thank you, Adele.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele. That's good. At least it's nice to see a few of them moving forward. Thank you to all that work that has been done previously. Thank you very much. Okay, we can. Do we have a motion and we seconded? Do we call all in favor?
No.
No motion yet.
Oh, no motion. Oh, yeah, later on. Sorry, my apologies.
No, we just don't have a motion yet.
Okay, so anyone, there we go. Councillor Cadigan.
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion that we receive the report and remove the hold on the property.
And I see Councillor Frandon for a seconder.
Yes, you did.
All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. See that moving along. Okay, 10.4.3 of our agenda, Adele Arbor once again, our planner.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, I prepared this report on today's agenda to allow the applicant and consultants to speak to their zoning bylaw amendment application, which they weren't able to in December. The report is essentially a chronology of events to bring council up to date on this file, subsequent to council's resolution of September 16th, requesting a deferral and a compromise on the covered porch. On October 25th, the applicant's agent sent an email indicating their client was going to leave the house design as is and a compromise wasn't attained. Chris Jones prepared supplemental memos 1 and 2 that were presented to council. In summary, the existing dwelling is 83.3 square meters. The zoning bylaw allows a 50% expansion as of right, which would allow for a 125 meter square dwelling. The applicants wanted to increase the expansion to the proposed dwelling to 381 square meters. The external planning consultant, Mr. Jones, had supported the zoning bylaw application, except for the roof over the lake-facing deck patio and increased lot coverage. Some additional information was provided by the applicant's consultants yesterday and was circulated to council, and you heard earlier as part of the delegation presentation. Some additional information that I have included in this report includes a summary for council's consideration, and it also identifies the portion of the proposed dwelling within the water yard to be 230 meters squared, which is an approximate 276% expansion over the current existing dwelling located in the water yard. Lot coverage strictly in the water yard is proposed at approximately 22%. When assessing planning applications, staff try to encourage improvements to the water yard setback. Therefore, staff are recommending that council receive the report from the planner regarding council's reconsideration of resolution R 2022-667, and further that council continue to support resolution R 2022-667 approved at the December 20th, 2022 council meeting. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Adele. Anyone have any questions of Adele? I'm seeing no hands. Okay, anyone like to make a, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Braybrook.
Through you, Mayor, I'll make a motion to receive the report and also to continue to support resolution R 2022-667.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder.
With a comment, if I may.
You certainly may.
It appears there may have been some issues in the process in terms of notifications and ability to speak up and the recognition report. So just want to comment that that's noted. And of course, we staff always and council always continue to improve how we do things. So however, issues with the process don't change the decision around the viability of what's being proposed here.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. We have none from finance, nothing from administration. Corporate services. Section 10.7, Ann Roth, can you please speak for our multi-year accessibility plan?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Landshead, to Council. Under the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the municipality is required to have a multi-year accessibility plan. The 2023 to 2027 plan before you today is intended to support and strengthen the municipality's commitment to the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers to ensure that people of all ages and abilities enjoy the same opportunities to live, work, visit, and invest in our community. The plan highlights some of the progress achieved under the municipality's 2018 to 2022 plan and is intended to build on past efforts and accomplishments in improving accessibility. It identifies our objectives and proposed actions over the term of the plan under each of the standards of the IASR, the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation. Appendix A to the plan provides an overview of the Municipality of Trent Lake's AODA and IASR compliance to date. Appendix B is the 2023 to 2027 action plan and identifies the lead department and timeline for each of our proposed actions. Staff will monitor the progress made on these proposed actions, and Appendix B will be updated annually to identify progress or completion status for each action as part of our annual status report. The plan itself may also be amended from time to time as best practices are identified and opportunities for improvement arise. We recognize that the AODA is currently under review, and the outcome of that review may require some revisions to the plan through its term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ann. Anyone have any questions of Ann regarding this report? I'm seeing no hands. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I'm seeing Councillor Braybrook.
I make a motion that we receive the report, and that council approve the Trent Lakes multi-year accessibility plan 2023 to 2027.
Okay, do I have a seconder? See Councillor Cadigan. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. That is a very comprehensive plan. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to section 10.7.2 of our agenda, and we'll be Ann Roth again, our deputy clerk. Council expenses. Would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead, to Council. This report brings forward Council expenses submitted for the month of December and the remainder of November for Council's consideration and approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Councillor Franzen.
I'd make a motion support.
Need a seconder? I see Councillor Cadigan. All in favor? All in favor? That motion is carried. All right, thank you very much. We can move on to section 11, which is correspondence for information. We can receive these all at once, or we can pull one or two out if you'd like to speak to that motion, to that item. Anyone care to go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I'll make a motion to receive all of the correspondence for information.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to correspondence for action, which is item number 12 of our agenda. We can move on to 12.1. Would anyone like to speak to this, or are we just gonna? Go ahead, Councilor Cassidy.
Speak to it, Mayor Lamshead. Through you, I would volunteer to be council representative on the Cabinet's Culture and Recreation Committee, provided that the current representative doesn't mind.
I have no issues with that whatsoever.
Okay.
As the ex officio, I might be joining you on some of the meetings.
Okay.
Anyone, everyone else okay with that? Okay. Okay, I think we'll call that a motion that you will.
Okay.
And then we need a seconder for that. Councilor Braybrook, all in favor? That motion is carried. We'll move on to item 12.2, which is the Galway Hall Board. They are requesting for a representative. Does anyone like to volunteer for that? I'm seeing Councilor Franzen.
I'd volunteer for that if the council's agreeable.
Do I have a seconder for that? The Councilor Braybrook. All in favor? That motion is carried. Perfect, that's nice. Kinmount District Health Center Liaison Committee. That's section number 12.3 of our agenda. Would anyone like to volunteer for that? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. I would like to be considered for that position, although I know that Councilor Franzen also has a long history with that organization as well.
Okay, Councilor Franzen, would you?
I'll second
Yes,
that motion.
okay, perfect. That's confirmation. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's perfect. Now we can move on to section 12.4 of our agenda, which is the Lakehurst Hall Board. Go ahead, Councilor Braybrook.
Through you, Mayor, I would be happy to be the council liaison for Lakehurst Hall.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a seconder for that? I'm seeing Councilor Cadian. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. Autonomy Peterborough Source Water Protection Authority. I'm pretty sure I can look at Councilor Franzen and he'll have his hand up. Yes, I do.
Yes, I do too. I just think it makes a lot of sense that since I sit on the Court of Conservation, we're dealing with source water management as well. So
That I will actually second that motion. Thank you very much for putting your hat in that ring. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the municipality, section 12.6, the municipality of Greenstone, bill number 3. Anyone care to?
I'll make a motion that we receive that letter.
Motion to receive. You need a seconder. See Councilor Franzen. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to bylaws on the agenda. I think we have a memorandum to speak about. Go ahead, Jesse Kirk.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead. There were 3 bylaws on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or public meeting. The first is B 2023-001, which is the interim tax levy bylaw. B 2023-002 is the annually passed borrowing bylaw. And B 2023-004 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a transfer payment agreement for the Nogies Creek and Misquizzibi River floodplain mapping study that we've received funding for.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to section 0.3 of our agenda, which is the interim tax levy. Anyone care to make a motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to approve.
Councilor Cadigan. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to the borrowing bylaw. Anyone care to make a motion? I see Councilor Franzen and Deputy Mayor Armstrong. All in favor? That motion is carried. Donna and I can borrow $500,000.
Yep.
Move on to section 13.4, the removal of the hold on Oak Orchards unit number 37. Anyone care to make a motion? I see Councillor Cadigan. Seconder of Councillor Braybrook. All in favor? That motion is carried. Item 13.5, which is the execute the transfer payment agreement for our floodplain. I see Councillor Deputy Mayor Armstrong. I'm going to do it.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Franzen. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. Do we have any business arising out of a previous meeting? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamson. Councillor Braybook and I have had a conversation. I believe at the last meeting, we appointed Councillor Braybook to the Buckhorn District Tourist Association. And I would like to be the representative for that, as I'm also the county representative on the Chamber of Commerce. I think that there may be some synergies and overlaps and potential opportunities. And Councillor Braybook can communicate whether or not he's acceptable to that change.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, I have no issues with that. That makes perfect sense.
I just need to ask our clerk, is that something that we can do with,
Thank you, please hold.
without a
Sorry.
large amount of paperwork?
Madam Clerk, I could have run that by you in advance.
Yes.
I would suggest that it would be a motion to reconsider the previous resolution appointing Councillor Braybrook to the Buckhorn District Tourist Association, and then further to appoint Deputy Mayor Armstrong to the BDTA.
I would like to make that motion.
Okay, that is the motion made. Can we have a second? I think we have Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor? That motion has carried. Sorry for the surprise to our clerk. Any notices of motion? Nothing on the agenda. Any information items? Seeing none. I will need a motion now to go into closed session for section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss advice that is subject to solicitor-client privileges, including communications necessary for that purpose, zoning compliance.
So moved.
Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going into closed. Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to rise from our closed meeting? Seeing Councillor Franzen and Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, now we can move on to business arising out of our closed meeting. We can adopt the minutes of our previous meeting. The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover and Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. All in favor of adopting the minutes? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 19 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the confirming bylaw. I'd like to make a motion. The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover and a seconder is Councillor Braybrook. All in favor? That motion is carried. I would like to move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? I see Councillor Franzen, everyone else fell asleep. Councillor Cadigan, all in favor? We are adjourned. That motion has carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much to all the staff that persevered today.